Hello, welcome. I hope you remember when I connected the digestive system with the blood vascular system. I brought the digested food into the blood, and then I said that this blood has to go around in the body, and the system which takes the blood around the body is called blood vascular system. And I had explained there the composition of blood and so-called the structure of blood and its functions. Now we'll be looking at how the next thing, heart, pumps this blood to all parts of the body. Of course, after having looked at the heart, we will see the blood vessels, the arteries, which take the blood to different parts of the body, and veins which bring blood back to the heart. Now, today's lesson will be regarding the heart. Heart is also an important organ in your body. We'll look at heart under the following subheadings: general information, and then position of the heart, where is it, and then external structure of the heart, then internal structure of the heart, and then the working of the heart. How does it work? Which is probably also called the function of the heart. Now, the general information concerning the heart is, and it is very interesting, I'll say. The heart starts beating in the baby after 6 weeks of conception. The heart has already started. Of course, it develops further during the weeks of 7th week and 8th week, but 6 weeks, the heart is already pumping. And it is pumping at the rate of roughly 70 to 100 times per minute, though the normal heartbeat is believed to be 72 times a minute. Now, which means, of course, the one beat in 1 second, roughly. Now, let's look at the position and size of the heart. Of course, all of you probably know our heart is somewhere here in the middle, slightly disposed towards the left side, in between the two lungs. You can even feel the heart beating here, like that. Now, it is roughly the size of a fist. The fist of an individual roughly is equal to the height of an individual. Now, when we look at this heart, of course, had it been lessons in person, I would have shown you the heart. Very interesting. Now, when we look at the heart from outside, the external structure, it is a bright red in color as it appears. It is shining and roughly looks like that of a mango sometimes. Now, when we look at it from outside, we see the one thing is that it is roughly of that color and it shines. It is covered over by means of a thin membranous layer called pericardiac layer. In between the muscles of the heart and the pericardiac layer, there is a fluid called pericardiac fluid. This pericardiac fluid keeps the heart moist all the time. In the absence of this, the heart can go dry and then there can be some problems. that will be a separate matter. In addition to that, when we look at the heart, we see roughly outside, we see these lines. This one is called interauriculoventricular septum. It's along that line. And this is interauricular and interventricular septum. We see this line, which shows that the heart is divided into 4 chambers. You can see it from outside. I mean, as we look at the heart as such. In addition to this, we see a blood vessel coming out like this called aorta, the main blood vessel which takes the blood from the heart to all parts of the body, from the head to the toe. Then we see another blood vessel coming out like this, which divides into 2. Each one going into the respective lungs. I mean, left lung and the right lung. We'll say this is the left pulmonary artery and the right pulmonary artery. In addition to that, we see on the right side of the heart 2 blood vessels getting into it, the precable and the postcable. This is called superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. These 2 blood vessels can be seen from our side. Similarly, on the left side we see 2 pulmonary veins coming into the left auricle of the heart. This is what we see when we see the external structure of the heart. Now, in addition to this that we see is that we see this heart is a muscular organ. It's made up of very strong muscles. And these muscles, the ones which are outside are called epicardiac muscles. The ones which are inside, in the middle, are called mesocardiac muscles. And there are some muscles towards the inner side, endocardiac muscles. So it is a muscular organ that has to be remembered. Now, we come to the internal structure, which is like this. Probably looks beautiful. Actually, it is beautiful. Heart is a beautiful structure. Now, when we have to see the internal structure of the heart, we have to cut it into 2 parts along its longitudinal axis. And this longitudinal section of the heart will show everything inside it. So here is the internal structure of the heart in a heart which has been cut along the long axis. Now what we see is that there are 2 chambers on the upper side called the auricles and the 2 chambers on the lower side called the ventricles. These 2 auricles are separated from the 2 ventricles by a membrane. This is called interauriculoventricular septum. Interauriculoventricular septum. This interauriculoventricular septum divides the auricles from the ventricles. This is the right auricle, this is the left auricle. Then there's a wall in between the 2 auricles separating the left auricle from the right auricle. The ventricle is also divided into 2, the left ventricle and the right ventricle. This is called the interventricular septum. Now what we notice here, that the muscles of the left ventricle are much more thicker than muscles of the right ventricle. The reason being that this ventricle has to pump the blood through the aorta, of course, to all parts of the body from the head to the toe. So more force is required. For that more force, the muscles has to be stronger. Unlike that, in case of the right ventricle, the blood has to go out through the pulmonary artery into the left and right lungs, which are close. I mean, lungs are actually around the heart. The heart is in between the two lungs. As it has to pump the blood to the lungs, which are not very far off, the muscles of the left ventricle are comparatively less thick and less in thickness. Now, the left auricle opens into left ventricle through these valves called the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. Similarly, the right auricle opens into right ventricle through 3 tricuspid valves called tricuspid valve. Now, tri and bi means 2 and 3. Cuspid means cup-like, valves means valves. What is interesting here is that these valves are like that. When blood flows from above towards the lower side, they open. But when the blood moves from below towards the upside, they close. Pressure here. So, the bicuspid valve will permit the blood to come from the left auricle into the left ventricle, but it will not let the blood from the left ventricle to go back into the left auricle. Very important valves. Similarly here, the tricuspid valve will permit the blood from the right auricle into the right ventricle, but from the right ventricle it will not permit the blood to go back because this also closes. Now these valves are almost like membranes, thin membranes. Now if these, as I said that these are thin membranes, it is possible with that pressure they revert like that. It doesn't happen. To hold that, there are small thread-like structures which hold these valves in their position. These thread-like structures are called chordae tendineae. Very important. They are thread-like structures holding the valves like that from these sides, so that they cannot reverse. Right. Similarly, the blood from the ventricles go out. Auricles receive the blood. From the ventricles, the blood goes out. From the left ventricle, there comes a big blood vessel called the aorta. As it comes out of the heart, it passes below the common pulmonary artery and then passes above the right pulmonary artery and arch around the heart to go behind the heart, and then when it goes behind the heart, it is called dorsal aorta, and this is called aortic arch. As soon as it comes out and bends like that, it gives one branch towards the right side, right subclavian, and then it gives 2 branches, one the right carotid artery and the left carotid artery, both going to the head. This is what we see when we actually look at the heart. Now, the blood can go from the ventricle, from the left ventricle into the aorta, and when it passes through these half moon shaped like valves called semilunar valves. Similar semilunar valves are present on the other side at the base of the pulmonary artery. These are semilunar, as its name indicates, half moon shaped like that, and there are 3 of them. Now the function of these valves is that they can permit the blood to go from the ventricle from the left ventricle into the aorta, and similarly from the right ventricle into the common pulmonary artery. Blood cannot come back into the ventricles from the aorta and the pulmonary artery respectively. So that is the function of the semilunar valves. Now, the blood which goes out through the pulmonary arteries comes back through pulmonary veins into the left auricle. Here it is. And the blood which has gone to all parts of the body through aorta to the head and the lower side of the heart comes back through these blood vessels. This is precaval, called superior vena cava, and postcaval or inferior vena cava. The two vena cavae open into the right auricle, and the blood from the right auricle comes into the right ventricle, and blood from the left auricle comes into the left ventricle. This is what we see when we look at the internal structure of the heart. Now, we have to look at the function of the heart. Function of the heart means the working of the heart. Working of the heart is also very interesting. As I have already said, that this heart starts beating in the baby when it is roughly 6 weeks old. And now the question is, I'm sure you will ask, how it can start working when the baby has not grown up and there's nothing, no body has developed. The answer is, it works or it beats on its own. Now, what makes it beat on its own is called a pacemaker. It develops right when the heart has developed. Now, this pacemaker consists of, by the way, this is what makes the heart beat. The interesting thing is that even in adults, the heart can beat without anything because of the pacemaker. And somebody asks, how is it? Of course, can be explained, but at this time, I'll say this is how it is, and probably be God. Now, I mean the nature, of course. Now, how does it work? The heart starts beating. Before I explain that, I'll explain the conduction system which makes the heart work. The conduction system consists of a node here. And this is called a sino-auricular node. It's present on the upper side of the auricle, slightly towards the left of the auricle, below the precaval. There's another node called auriculoventricular node, which is present close to the pulmonary artery and at the division of the right auricle and the right ventricle. It is called auriculoventricular node. These are the two main structures. By the way, sino-auricular node is called the pacemaker. It is the sino-auricular node which keeps the pace of the heart moving. Now, in addition to this, we have the connection between the sino-auricular node and auriculoventricular node. From auriculoventricular node, a bundle of muscles come out, I mean specialized muscles of course, which is called bundle of His. This is it coming out. Bundle of His. As it comes in between the intraventricular septum, it divides into two branches. One branch goes through the muscles of the left ventricle and then to the left side of the left ventricle. This branch is called the left bundle branch. The one which comes on this side is called the right bundle branch. These bundle branches break up into smaller branches in the ventricle, in the left ventricle as well as the right ventricle. And these branches are called Purkinje fibers. Now, what I have explained, the two nodes and bundle of His and left and right bundle branch, these are actually specialized muscles of the heart which behave like nerves actually. They can let the impulse pass through them. Now, so you have to remember that these are specialized cardiac muscles which behave like something like nerves. Now, what happens is, on its own, an impulse arises in the sino-auricular node, and this impulse rushes like that, like the light gets out of a torch, like that, and it makes these two auricles contract. When these two auricles contract, the blood present in the two auricles is pushed into the respective ventricles. Now that impulse from the sino-auricular node then comes to the auriculoventricular node, and it takes a little while. And it is said that this impulse stops here for a while, fraction of a second. Then from here, that's the time actually, the blood has moved from here to here. Then this impulse runs through the bundle of His, then to the left branch and right branch, and then that impulse makes the muscles of the ventricle contract from this side to this side. That impulse makes the ventricles contract from the lower side to the upper side, sort of squeezing movement. And in the beginning, the impulse moved the auricles from the upper side to the lower side. Now, when the auricles contract, the ventricle open up because the blood is being pushed. When the blood has come into the ventricles, the auricles which were closed now gradually open up, and the blood from the ventricles is pushed through the aorta and the common pulmonary artery to the outside. During this time, the blood from the pulmonary vein and the precaval and the postcaval comes into the auricles because the auricles open. I'll say it again. When the auricles contract, the ventricles open to receive the blood. When the ventricles contract, the blood is pushed to the outside and the auricles open up to receive the blood from the outside, that is pulmonary veins and the precavals. So the movement is almost like that. And one movement like this makes one beat. Now the green structure represents the conducting system of the heart, and this is what makes the heart work or function. So I'll say once again, the blood which has received the digested food comes to the heart. How? I'll explain. Then this heart pushes that blood to the outside, all parts of the body, and the blood from the lungs comes into the heart. This movement of the movement of the blood to different parts of the body and back is called circulation of blood, which connects now this lesson with the blood vessels. The blood going out of the heart and coming into the heart. Blood going out of the heart, arteries, and blood coming back into the heart is veins. So our next chapter will be the blood vessels, arteries and veins, which we will take next time. Thank you. But excuse me, I know you will have few questions, many questions. Had it been in person, you could have asked me questions and I would have answered. But because it is virtual, when you listen to this, you will get some questions in your mind. You can write those questions on a piece of paper. At the end, you can put those questions in the column of in the columns of questions. Then I will answer those questions in my next lesson. Thank you.